In the quiet suburbs of Austin, Texas, where the oak trees swayed gently in the evening breeze and neighbors waved as they passed by, lived a woman named Sarah Collins. At 42, Sarah had a life that many would describe as fulfilling but layered with responsibilities. She worked as a pediatric nurse at the local children's hospital, a role that demanded long hours, steady patience, and an endless well of compassion. She had chosen this career because she wanted to make a difference, to be a steady hand in the moments when families were at their most vulnerable. But while her work consumed much of her time, her heart was always anchored at home, with her husband Mark and her 17-year-old stepson, Ethan. Sarah never imagined that one of her most meaningful relationships would grow not out of blood, but out of choice and persistence. When she first met Mark, she knew he was the one she wanted to spend her life with. He was kind, steady, and dependable, the sort of man who kept his promises and never spoke without meaning his words. He had been through his own struggles, though, chief among them, a divorce that had left him raising Ethan part-time. Mark was devoted to his son, and from the moment Sarah came into his life, he made it clear, Ethan would always come first. Sarah respected that. In fact, it was one of the things she loved about him. But it also meant that when she married him, she wasn't just becoming a wife. She was stepping into the role of stepmother, a role that came without a guidebook, without guarantees, and without any certainty that she would ever truly be accepted. The early years were the hardest. Ethan was 12 when Sarah officially became part of his life. At that age, he was old enough to understand that his parents were no longer together, but too young to fully process what it meant. He carried his pain quietly, often retreating into his room with his video games or headphones. At first, he treated Sarah like she was simply part of the furniture, polite when necessary but otherwise distant. When Mark encouraged him to include her in conversations or outings, Ethan would nod but rarely engage. Sarah remembered those years vividly, the ache of trying to connect with a child who seemed determined to keep her at arm's length. She tried everything: cooking his favorite meals, cheering from the sidelines at his soccer games, buying him the art supplies he once mentioned wanting. Sometimes he responded with a small smile or a thank you, but more often, he retreated back into his quiet world. Many nights, Sarah would lie awake beside Mark, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was doing the right thing. "Maybe he'll never accept me," she whispered once, her voice trembling with doubt. Mark had reached for her hand in the dark. "Give him time. He's been through a lot. But I know my son. Deep down, he sees what you're doing for him. One day, he'll realize it." Sarah wanted to believe that. She clung to the hope that love, steady, patient love, could one day bridge the distance between them. And so, she didn't give up. She showed up for Ethan in small, consistent ways. She asked about his school projects, helped him with homework when he got stuck, and learned to sit through entire soccer matches even when the Texas heat made her dizzy. She never tried to replace his mother, who lived in another state, but she tried to be a stable presence, a safe person he could count on. Over the years, she began to notice subtle changes. Ethan would join her in the kitchen sometimes, hovering awkwardly as she baked cookies. He would ask her opinion on schoolwork or share a funny meme on his phone. He began to acknowledge her cheers during his games with a quick wave. These were small gestures, but to Sarah, they felt monumental. Slowly, the walls he had built began to show cracks. Still, she often wondered, did he truly see her as family? Or was she just someone who happened to share the house he lived in? That question lingered in her heart for years, until one winter evening, when Ethan answered it in a way she never expected. It was mid-December, and the holiday season had filled their neighborhood with warmth. Houses sparkled with lights, wreaths adorned doors, and the air smelled of cinnamon and pine. Sarah had been working extra shifts at the hospital, covering for colleagues who wanted time off with their families. She didn't mind. After all, many of her young patients couldn't go home for Christmas, and she wanted to be there for them. But the long hours left her exhausted. One evening, she returned home later than usual, her feet aching, her shoulders heavy with fatigue. She stepped into the house, expecting to find the usual sounds of Mark watching TV or Ethan upstairs with his music. Instead, she was greeted by soft holiday music playing through the speakers and the faint glow of twinkling lights. She slipped off her coat and called out, "Mark? Ethan?" There was a pause before Ethan's voice carried down from upstairs. "Up here." Confused, Sarah climbed the staircase. As she reached the landing, she froze. The hallway had been transformed. Strings of white fairy lights glowed along the walls, casting a warm and magical glow. Handmade paper snowflakes were taped to the doors, each carefully cut with unique patterns. And across the hallway, a small banner hung with bold letters that read, "Thank you, Sarah." Her breath caught in her throat. She pressed a hand to her chest, unsure if she was dreaming. Just then, Ethan stepped out of his room, holding a neatly wrapped box in his hands. His tall frame looked suddenly smaller, almost shy, as he shifted from one foot to the other. "Ethan, what is all this?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. He swallowed hard, his eyes dotting nervously between her and the floor. I wanted to do something for you." "For me?" she whispered. He nodded. "You've done a lot for me. More than I ever told you. I know I wasn't easy when you first came into my life. I know I wasn't always nice. But you never gave up on me. You kept caring. And I wanted you to know that I noticed. That I'm grateful." Sarah felt her eyes well with tears. She tried to speak, but her throat tightened with emotion. Ethan extended the box toward her. "I made you something." Her hands trembled as she unwrapped the gift. Inside was a scrapbook, thick, colorful, and clearly handmade with hours of care. She opened the cover and found the first page decorated with photos of the three of them. Sarah, Mark, and Ethan, smiling at a picnic. Each page after that was filled with memories: birthday parties, soccer games, family trips, and silly selfies. Ethan had saved ticket stubs from movies, notes from school, and even a leaf from the park where they used to walk. On the final page, written in Ethan's messy but earnest handwriting, were the words, "To Sarah, my other mom. Thank you for loving me." The tears Sarah had been holding back spilled down her cheeks. She looked at Ethan, who now stood awkwardly, his face flushed. Without hesitation, she wrapped her arms around him, hugging him tightly. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice breaking, "this is the most beautiful gift anyone has ever given me." For the first time, Ethan didn't stiffen or pull away. Instead, he hugged her back, his arms strong around her. "Merry Christmas, Sarah," he said softly.